All right, I'm here with 2016 Olympian and 2020, well now 2021 qualifier, triple jumper Thea Lafond and her coach Aaron Gadson. So what we wanted to talk about today was training through uncertainty. You know, in this time of COVID, there's a lot of questions and nothing bigger than, with in the sporting world as far as schedule. So in a sport like track where, every detail is important and the training cycle throughout the year is, kind of written to a T. I want to talk through how we are training through, not knowing when that next scheduled meet is going to be, not knowing where, when we need to peak, etc. So, in getting to know Thea and Aaron, I've really respected their relationship between coach and athlete and their ability to critically think through issues and problems such as injury. So I want to start talking through the COVID situation, then kind of get into a little more of the nuance of, the coach communication and dealing with injury. And I think this should be insightful for athletes, coaches, and for physical therapists and other medical practitioners. So Thea and Aaron, thank you very much for joining me tonight.
Thanks for having us.
And thanks for the invite.
Of course. Yeah. So like I said, with all this uncertainty and change surrounding this COVID situation, what has been the biggest challenge you've had to face dealing with in your training cycle?
Do you want to go first, Aaron? How do you want to?
So from a coaching perspective, I think that obviously the biggest challenge is, we don't have access to a lot of the facilities that we're used to. And so as far as how that manifests itself as to what Thea needs to do is that we just can't get a lot of high quality and kind of high intensity work in. And so just so, we're on the same page, when I say quality and intensity, I'm thinking more of faster stuff, full approach work, full jumps, more like full competition kind of rhythm type activities. And so with that challenge, I can't see Thea, so I don't know if she's doing things poorly, if she's moving well or not. And so I have to be a lot more conservative in kind of the stuff that I'm prescribing because I don't want her to get hurt. And I also don't want her to build poor movement patterns doing stuff wrong just over and over again. I think that's, at her level, you have to have high intensity and it has to be high quality, it has to be good technique and things like that.
Certainly, Aaron. So what have you been doing to, quantitatively and qualitatively monitor her training?
So I'll say qualitatively is really all that I have at the moment. Well, yeah, pretty much qualitative stuff. So I'm going to be asking her, every workout, how does she feel? How are things doing? We have some weekly meetings, just so all you guys understand. I also coach a couple other women that are in her group. And so we might meet every week or something just to talk through the workouts and talk through how things are. I think even in person, I'm always asking people how they're doing physically each day. Does this hurt? Is this sore or whatever? And I'd kind of look through trends to understand, did I do too much? Did I do too little? Did I do just right? Are they getting beat up too much? Is it time for a rest week and things like that? So quantitatively, I don't really have much. Usually I like to be timing a lot of stuff. They have sent me some videos occasionally and I look at that stuff. But at the same time, Thea's jumping on grass most of the time. She's hasn't been in the pit for 2 months. So there's not a great quantitative measures because she's not even doing stuff that's super high intensity anyway, where it really matters.
Got it. So Thea, what has been the biggest, challenge for you?
I think it's not having the access to facilities. I don't think I realized how much I actually use, in the realm of working out until all this hit. I'm like, okay, there's no weight room. That's how I start my mornings off, is in a weight room. No access or legal access to a track right now. We had the indoor facility that we normally use is literally half turf, half track with Olympic lifts on the edge of it, the parameter. So it's everything you could even want in one building. That's gone. And then the greatest thing is lack of access to my coach. so I think that those like three things, like no weights, no track, no coach, and I have found a way to get the track portion back. And I am in like daily contact with Aaron. We're always talking about my day workouts, whether it's bounding or whether it was just an abs day. There's a constant feedback. But I think lack of facility has been the greatest hit, because now you have to, for lack of better terms, make do. And when you think about, now penultimate year to an Olympic year, the penultimate to Olympic year, like making do is not something you really want in like your schedule. But myself, and as are many other athletes in my situation, this is what we're doing. And yeah, we're making do.
Certainly. So like, what are some ways you're adapting? So not having the weights, not having the abilities, what are some methods you guys are utilizing to, make the most out of the situation?
So I told you earlier, well, before this, excuse me, today I actually finished setting up a weight room in my own house. So I cleared out, actually it helped because I got to clean a little, cleared out a storage room, half of it. And I went up to Churchill, where we had a bunch of mats, and we got them out. And I was able to lay down. So now, like, my storage room in our house has a proper mat, and now I have weights in there and stuff like that. So we overcame that part. The track, I'm getting on a track. I am. So those two are there. And of course, I'm not getting, the high intensity workouts that I'm getting that I would normally get if Aaron's around. But I definitely think that we've definitely turned these last couple months into almost a month of like healing and fine tuning. Everything that used to be bugging me, I've had this like upper hamstring situation on my left side that's kind of been like nagging for a bit. And we've definitely used this time to take care of that. There's an entire, I call it like my little rehab station upstairs, whether it's like bands, stretching rope, a foam roller, a roll recovery, a couple of cross balls, and just creating a place where I can still kind of take care of my body and still even do, online FaceTime meetings with a PT or something to talk things through. And I think Aaron and I both agree that, during this time, though we can't physically do what we want to do, we still have to find ways to get better, whether it's on or off the track. And right now, off the track is the focus.
Yeah, certainly. So Aaron, I know how detail oriented you are with a plan. So as you're planning to try to, peak for this Olympic Games, and then you have to reroute, what is your process like for making decisions about, with this timeline getting pushed and the timeline being relatively uncertain, how are you changing route and deciding what to focus on now and how to, make the most out of the situation, find the silver lining?
So I think kind of as Thea touched on a bit, like one of the first things was kind of just making sure that we give her appropriate rest to kind of clear up any kind of nagging things that she might have. I look at it kind of like, the whole world is kind of going through this. So I don't necessarily see it as like losing time per se, like as everybody's losing time. And so it's like, in some countries, they're like really locked down. Like they can't leave their house. They can just walk their dog, And so I look at it like that, say, hey, like we're not in that situation. It's not that bad. So like, we don't need to have crazy anxiety about like losing time or missing out because everybody's in the same boat. So, first kind of just give a little bit of rest, try to clear those things up. And then I think of things around like in track and field, they talk about kind of like bimotor abilities. Sometimes, I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but basically, maybe like strength, speed, things like that, right? You have those kind of qualities. And then I also kind of have like skill as maybe a different quality. And so at least with Thea, like I think of like, hey, like she's like pretty damn strong. So we're not super concerned about strength right now. And I know strength takes a while, weeks kind of to dissipate. And if you're still doing some ballistic and plyometrics, you can, maintain some of that stuff. So the weight room's not a big deal. We do some plyometrics. We do some ballistic stuff. Thea has a dancing background. Her flexibility is pretty good, but there's some little issues that we, might work in there. Her speed is pretty good. Let's just try to like maintain the speed. And then as far as maybe like a bimodality, maybe a little bit more detailed bimodality, like for jumping in particular, I think about like elasticity. And so I think as elasticity is almost like separated from the skill of triple jump, there's certainly some connection between, strength and like coordination. But when I'm talking about elasticity in particular, I say like, okay, we're thinking about like how well can we get off the ground? We want to reduce contact times. We want to improve our ability to generate force very quickly. And so like you can do those things without necessarily incorporating the triple jump skill into them. And so, as far as how that manifests itself into what I did with Thea is like, okay, we're going to do a bunch of like death jumps. We're going to do a bunch of death landings. We're going to do some more extensive bounding. So, we're literally like 90-meter, kind of like straight leg runs and things like that. And so again, in a more of a perfect world, like I'd actually be able to like measure contact times and things like that. I can't really do that given our current situation. But the whole idea behind that stuff was like, hey, like let's try to increase that quality and maintain some of these other qualities that might be a little bit more, reliant on equipment or reliant on, having a great track surface or even track surface or, a coach's eye. I don't want to do a lot of speed stuff right now because I can't see her. And if it looks bad, it creates bad habits or she might get hurt. So like, let's just do a little bit of speed to keep it, for instance. And then as far as maybe some of the technical stuff, I think something that's maybe kind of like underappreciated is like your mind has the ability to create, neurological connections through just visualization. And so, we've taken this time with Thea to actually really become like a student of the sport. I created like a playlist of like people that I thought jump really well. And I think Thea actually kind of goes overboard with this a little bit. She probably watches that thing every day, like multiple times a day, because I
Yeah.
call her and she's watching it. I'm like, why are you watching this? You see, what I'm saying? And she's like, oh, I really love this person. I'm like, who are you talking about? She like starts to know about this stuff more than I do because she's been watching it a million times. But
I start to know the length of the videos by heart.
That's hilarious.
Like, oh, that's a 16-second video. Why do I know?
So I'm saying that like through her watching people that do it really well and through her visualizing herself how to do it, she's actually creating these neurological connections that's going to help her physically perform better when it matters. And then she's actually kind of like looking at those videos and saying like, hey, I really need to use my arms better. And like, that's not something that we really talked about because it's not maybe necessarily like the biggest priority, but it's definitely something that is helpful and it's important. And just because she's thinking about it more, I think she understands the movement a lot better and it's going to help her out a lot more when she actually starts jumping.
That's awesome. Thea, have you found a lot of growth from that, being able to sit back and, not having a competition on the direct horizon and be able to say, I got a little more time, I can really, really study here and become a student?
Yeah, I think, I mean, like Aaron said, I remember looking at film and looking at these jumpers like compete, and there's still a little bit of jealousy watching them compete right now, these old videos. But also, I mean, I never even really paid attention to, the power of arms before, I guess it was like last week I told him about that. And I think I've been forced to take a step back and have to learn about my sport another way. And not saying that I didn't utilize film, but I definitely did not utilize film this much. And now it's easily takes up, I mean, it's only an hour a day, 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes in the afternoon, but it's starting to add up a lot already. And it's definitely forced me to really pay attention to these subtle nuances that I probably hadn't even noticed for the last, 10 12 years of jumping. And it's definitely forced me to become a better student of the sport, 100%. I'm looking at these jumps and I'm like, I never noticed this jumper had this bad habit. Like, they'd be even better if they didn't have this habit. And then you come and you look at your film, like my film. I started to look at my old film now, and it's good to see the growth, but I can also now see, places where I still need development. And then I can come back to Aaron and have conversations and be like, hey, did you ever notice this or this or that? And I will say that is one of the, upsides to this entire, pandemic odd situation is that I think I've definitely become more diligent in other areas. And maybe I didn't notice how weak my film study was until now, or maybe I just didn't have enough time to dedicate to it as I have right now. But yeah, the studying of this sport has been, like Aaron said, that maybe I've gone a little overboard on it, but hey, what else am I gonna do right now? So
That's really cool. So Thea, with having something you're focusing so hard on for such a long amount of time, and then having the schedule switched on you, how are you finding yourself being able to stay mentally focused and just positive throughout the situation?
so I'm going to be honest, that when I first heard about the possibility of the Olympics being postponed a year, I feel like a little numb. I think I was so mentally prepared to get going this summer. I drastically changed my life in the last 4 years. I literally hunted down a coach and found Aaron, and it was awesome. And I'm ranked well in the world, and I was ready to go. And amazing season, coming off a major injury. And I think the first week or so after finding out about the postponement, I don't think I was in a really good mental space. And then I remember talking to Aaron a few times in our last couple practices, and we acknowledged that while this seems like a setback, and maybe it's an amazing untapped opportunity in which I now have an extra year to even get better. And I really had to start believing that and start acting like that. And it was difficult at first, getting motivated and staying motivated once my schedule was just, in a sense, kind of destroyed. But I think it was easier to build back that motivation once I started creating my own schedule. And Aaron kind of gave me a blueprint of certain activities, certain workouts that I had to do in a week, things I had to complete. And I was allowed to create that schedule. And I very quickly created a very rigid one, and I've stuck to it for the last 2 months. And I think having some kind of order back in my life has really helped with the motivation, because now I have that schedule. Now I can set goals to every activity. And so now I've created these little building blocks for my sport. And I think that was the major thing. And I'm not going to lie and say that, I was on to the next when I heard the news of postponement. But I think that once I got back on some kind of grind, I was able to, hone back in on now 2021. So.
Awesome. I think that's so cool because, in track, you're used to having such frequent embedded feedback,
Yeah.
Feedback from your coach, feedback from a stopwatch, feedback from competition. And what I'm hearing you say is for a second, it just the rug gets pulled out from underneath you.
Yeah.
And then you had to find this process for yourself and almost set up this feedback process for yourself by setting these mini goals that you can achieve.
Absolutely.
What's an example of some of those things that you goals and, objective feedback that you set for yourself?
So it actually kind of helps out that Aaron has created a daily chart for me. Every day I log my sleep, my workout, my emotions, any soreness, any pain, and any therapy. And so from there, I don't even think he knows this, but I've started writing down my goals on the side of things I want to do. So let's say straight leg runs, which are over 90 meters. I wanted to get to a point where I didn't feel like I was losing a lot of speed. I felt like the first time I did it, mind you, was getting back into it. I think I started out with 6. And by the 4th one, I felt a little winded. And so I was like, oh no, let's try to get to 5 next time. Let's try to get to 6 next time. And the number increased every week. So it was definitely something that was attainable because the barrier kept shifting. And I would do that. With flexibility, one of my goals was to get my split, which was left leg forward, more upright, because I can do a split, but it's not very confident, and I was very uncomfortable. I couldn't hold it for very long. So that was something I created there. And so I would take pictures of myself, and I would watch the progression of my upper body getting upright. I have very flat feet. So I also have arch work and calf work that I do. And I have literally been taking pictures of my feet just to track improvement on my arches. And with my circuit workouts, which I do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I didn't really know how to track improvement. And then Aaron just said, like, time it. And I was like, that's brilliant. Like, why didn't I think of that? So I've actually timed it, and I've gone from like completing it in like 11 minutes to now 8.5 minutes over the past 2 months. So like, it's just little things like that. And plus the chart that's already there has helped me kind of log and see my improvements. I have photos that line up with every week in my camera roll. And another thing was sleep, because I didn't want to, like, if I'm gonna be home, I better be sleeping well. I don't know if you guys know this, but on a regular day, I actually wake up, I lift in the building that I work at a school, high school, and then I go to work all day. So normally I'm up by like 5:30, 6 o'clock every morning. And in 20 minutes from getting up, since the house is like across the street from the school, in 20 minutes I'm in a weight room every morning. So I was like, well, I don't have to get up and lift anymore, so I better be getting some sleep. And now my sleep chart numbers are amazing. They used to be 8 to 9 hours, and half my week is now 11 hours. So I'm getting the sleep in. I can now shift my workouts about, which is nice. And I'm definitely feeling the difference. I feel bouncier right now. There is an improvement in flexibility. There's less soreness in my body. But that's kind of how I track it. It sounds quite extensive, but that's how I do it.
That's awesome. I think, like you said, like when we're dealing with uncertainty like this, finding some rigid boundaries for yourself, if that's the kind of place, I think that's humongous.
I need to be able to hold myself accountable.
And just to add on a teeny bit to that, like, I want to give Thea a bunch of credit on that, because, I maybe like precipitated like her to maybe think of ways to measure some of those things, but like she's taken 100% initiative to do a lot of that stuff. I haven't, like, she tells me that, I think I might have like mentioned it offhand, like, yeah, you could time them, for instance, you could, do this or do that. And then she's like, yeah, I've got my time down or whatever. And I didn't even really realize she was doing that. I think it's just important for like a human to just have little goals to kind of look forward to. It helps them, kind of stay accountable. And I mean, one other thing she didn't mention is like she does a little ab circuit, and they were doing 500. I was like, hey, let's see if you guys can work up to 1,000. And that's something that I think they started doing this week, which I think was good. It's just a little like challenge for them to do. And they can hold each other accountable by doing it together. Yeah. But again, a lot of the stuff that Thea is talking about, the pictures of her foot and all that stuff, that was her. I didn't come up with that one. I mean, I maybe came up with some ideas about foot exercises to do, but she came up with monitoring it and stuff like that.
That's awesome. So I want to shift a little bit to the origin of your guys' coach-athlete relationship. So you guys started working together after the 2016 Olympics.
Yeah.
So Aaron, I want to talk a little bit about when you're starting to work with an elite athlete who's already been successful. What are those first steps you do to take a look at what needs to change? What is your evaluation process, and how do you start deciding where to intervene?
So in this, I can speak more generally, but I think I try to do this with kind of anybody new that I work with, at least kind of like at more of an elite level. Like Thea and I and Muhammad, you guys, I don't know if you met Muhammad before.
I haven't, no.
Muhammad is one of my best friends. We went to Cornell together and jumped together. We lived together post-collegiately for a while. He's a London and Rio Olympian in triple jump for the U.S. Virgin Islands. And that's like in the picture of the Virgin Islands shirt that he gave that to me. I was at Rio supporting him for that. He's also NCAA champion in the triple jump. But anyway, all of us kind of sat down and we talked about kind of like her training history, like what she's been doing, what she kind of thinks her issues are, what her previous kind of, if it's lift numbers or sprint numbers or jump numbers are. And then I'd actually want to kind of do a physical assessment. So she might do some basic kind of testing. So, standing long jump or standing triple jump, maybe some short approach jumps. Maybe not like all out sprinting, but at least some sprinting just to see technically like what she looks like. Um, and then from there I can like get an understanding of like, do I feel like what I know and what I do can actually help somebody reach their goals. And generally speaking, from a technical standpoint, there's a lot of room to grow. And so, that assessment usually is very helpful and it gives me a lot of confidence that I'm going to be able to help them. Um, but yeah, usually that's kind of like the first start. Hopefully, if they went to like a strong collegiate program, they probably have some good testing numbers that I can go off of. And so I can understand if I feel like they can be a lead or not. Like I've had over the past few years, thanks to kind of like Thea's, I guess, success, like a lot of women hit me up about helping them. And it's like, if you have like high school type numbers and you're talking about going to the Olympics, like that's going to be really difficult. And so like I kind of have to have those tough conversations with them. Like everybody should have their dreams and stuff like that. But like if you're barely going to get recruited D1, how the heck do you expect to qualify for the Olympics, And so fortunately, through the assessment that I do and their collegiate numbers and collegiate testing, like I can get a good understanding of where I can kind of fit in and help that person grow.
That's awesome. So with Thea's circumstance, what are some, like, I understand after you started coaching, you hit some pretty good numbers over in Franklin Field, recently after starting. So what were some of the big changes that you guys made in order to, take that next step?
I mean, I can definitely answer. I don't want to hog
Go ahead.
the whole thing. I mean, I would say that honestly, Thea's whole thing kind of got revamped. Like her running technique got changed significantly. Her jumping technique changed significantly. I mean, this is really technical triple jump stuff, but she went from doing a single arm technique to a double arm technique, and she changed, the leg that she hops off of. And both of those things I would say are pretty significant changes. And like, it wasn't necessarily my idea to do that. I mean, Thea, like day one, asked me to help her do double arm, and I think because she had the interesting experience with that, which she can share with you. Um, as far as switching her leg, like I think Thea, I like to do drills on both sides of the body for, I think it's good as far as kind of just balancing out the volume, but I also think there's a cross learning effect, which you guys are probably aware of as far as like, somebody's injured and they just train the other limb, that, there's actually a learning effect that can still happen for when they get better. And so I think that, training both sides in a way can help you learn even faster because you get more volume of learning a skill. And so through that process, I was like, man, her other leg is looking better. It's looking better. And I forget what time of the year it was, but it was kind of like, I think it was maybe like in March or something.
Yeah, we had already done a couple meets.
And I was like, man, this other leg is
Going on
looking
like,
better. We should probably change her leg, but like, that's kind of risky. I mean, but we did it. And I think the F has generally had a pretty strong trust in what I'm doing. And so she kind of went with it and it worked out.
yeah.
But I definitely wouldn't like recommend trying to switch everybody up like that because those are some big changes. But it
That's not a
worked out
common
well.
occurrence. That's not
Yeah,
a
I was
common
gonna say,
occurrence.
how rare is that?
Most people, like if they switch legs, it tends to be off of necessity, as in like an injury. Like Christian Taylor switched legs because he was having serious problems on one side, and now he's like the second best jumper in history. But it's definitely not. It's not common at all. And women double arming is also not common either. And the story he was talking about was I was training with a coach leading up to Olympic season. And I remember talking to him, I was like, hey, I think that I could double arm. I mean, guys double arm. And I was like, you guys are great, but I'm sure if a guy can do it, I can figure it out. And he was like, okay, well, let's see what you got. And I was like, I was just literally walking, like doing a walking triple jump drill and trying to figure out arms. And I was like, what do you think? And he just kind of like looked at me side-eyed, stick to single arm. And I was like, okay. So I just stopped there. And when the first meeting I had with Aaron and Muhammad, and I was like, I really think that I could be a good double arm jumper, and I want to do it. And then the next day, we had our first practice, and I was doing drills, and I was kind of doing single armed, and Aaron was like, no, you said you want to do double. And I was like, oh, we're starting now? And he was like, yeah, we're starting now. And ever since then, from the get-go, I was a double arm jumper under Aaron for sure. But he definitely stripped down everything technique-wise, and I was looking forward to it. I mean, I was eager to get to practice to get better, and that's what I remembered. And I would learn how to do a proper hop, a proper step to jump, how to land properly. No one ever taught me how to sprint properly. And I had to learn that. And I had to really figure out what being front side and what front side mechanics were for running, because that was not in my repertoire. I would just like start and just get to a board somewhere and begin a jump from that. And I tell him this all the time, that I don't think I really knew triple jump until after I was being coached by him. And in 6 months, I think it was in 6 months, I qualified for Worlds under him. And I mean, if that's not a testimony to like good coaching, good technique,
Yeah.
and just being all in, I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. Yeah.
Why is that double arm not common for females in triple?
Aaron, do you have an answer? Because I don't.
My answer
No.
bluntly is sexism, but I don't I don't have a good explanation for why it would be different.
Is it just kind of one of those things that this is how it is and it's always been like this? So, or is there like?
Well, when I say sexism, just to be clear, so all you guys have the background, like, and Thea mentioned this earlier, is that most guys double arm. Not all of them, but I'd say probably like 90% of guys use double arm. But it's probably the other way around for women. It might even be less than that. It's probably like less than 5% of women do double arm, maybe even less than that. Like Thea's the only one that does double arm at her level.
Crazy.
We're talking top 32 in the world. She's the only one that double arms.
Is there like an explanation of like theoretically why they don't, why most coaches don't want women double arming, or is it just kind of this is how it is? Like
there's some old, like I said, sexist type stuff, like like NFL stuff. They do antiquated things. I don't know. There's no reason.
There is no reason.
There's no papers that I've read.
So interesting.
There's no. I've never seen that. In fact, there's a guy in the UK that I was talking to that did some research that actually suggested double arm is optimal.
Yeah.
And that's what I believe personally. But there's nothing that suggests that. There's no papers that says that single arm is optimal, and there's no paper that suggests that women should be doing single arm over men because of some physiological or anthropometric difference. There's nothing that suggests that.
Yeah, what clicked for you that made you want to try it?
I think that I remember watching men's triple jump and just seeing how much power they were able to create the way they jumped. And I was like, I don't think I jump with as much power as they have. And whether it's like lifting, lifting could be a factor, technique could be a factor, but I was like, I could totally do that. Like, I could do it. And maybe it's, the dancer background in me is kind of like, it's choreography. Like, teach me how to do it, and I should be able to do it. And maybe it's also, the competitive edge in me. If a guy can do it, like, I can do it, and that was just it. And for some reason, I could not let it go. And when I told Aaron, and it worked out because Aaron coaches primarily double arm jumpers. And he was just the coach that ended up believing in me and helping me achieve that. And that was it. But I'm the only one. All my, triple jump friends, and I'm the only one that doubles. So.
How long did it take you to feel confident with it and to the point where it was enhancing your performance?
Whew. I think the first few weeks were kind of odd, but I want to say like a month. I started getting into a rhythm of it. I would actually, Aaron would suggest like me just walking around and like walking triple jump, like practice the arms. I used to do that around the house. I used to do that at school. My students were mocking me. They were like, Miss Lafond, look, and like do their arms with it. And so I was getting in mental reps, and I was getting in reps on the track. And by the end of 1 month, I was ready to just like go after it. And I had already decided that, you know, whether it felt comfortable or not, like you have to at least go through the discomfort to get to the comfortable part eventually. So about a month, I'd say. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. So looking at your guys, you know, coach athlete relationship, what are some major principles or major keys that you would look at for other athletes to look at for a relationship and that? What has made that successful? What has made that, you know, a thing that leads to more confidence for you, Thea? And then for Aaron, what are some things that you're looking for, qualities you look for in a, you know, an athlete that you want to coach?
Communication. I have to be able to, you know, tell them how I feel, and not be like concerned that, you know, it might make him upset. Like sometimes I just have to tell the truth, whether or not it's like good or bad news. And I'm very much so the type that will like try to fight through things. We learned that I have almost like way too high of pain tolerance. But being able to say like, you know, like this doesn't feel good or this hurts, like, could you explain to me maybe what I'm doing wrong? And that absolutely has to happen because I don't want to have to like, I don't want to, and I shouldn't push through discomfort because if you do things right, it shouldn't hurt. And I think that a lot of athletes have to remember that. And you know, and your coach doesn't know what's going on with your body until you open your mouth and say something. And I think a lot of athletes don't really notice that either. And so, you know, I had a quad injury in the fall. And I remember the meets leading up to it, I was like, you know, like this is sore and now this actually hurts. But, you know, I competed and I was like, and there was a part of me that was just like, you know, like we both seem kind of confident about this year. Things are feeling good. We're going to Worlds. And literally at Worlds, I was like, something is really, really wrong. And then we ended up going to the hospital and I have like a grade 2 tear. But I was like, I always kick myself in the butt. I was like, I should have said like earlier, like, yo, like there's something's not right. Let's just go home. Let's leave Europe, stop competing, and let's go get something looked at. Like, let's go get an MRI, let's get a scan, something. But it's also like a lesson learned. And the sport is also about pushing your boundaries, and I definitely pushed my boundaries. But my huge thing is communication, even down to the log that, you know, mood, hurt, workout, he gets to see that. And at least that's a place, even if it's not verbal, like we are both on the same page. So.
Awesome. Aaron?
Well, I think that for an athlete, like there's certain, I'll call them like prerequisites. So like you got to be willing to put in the work. And like that, I mean, that sounds like obvious or maybe like cliche or something like that. But like at a bare minimum, you have to be consistent. You got to, you got to always be a practice. You got to do everything that I ask you to do. I mean, that's not without exception. Like, if something's hurting or whatever, things come up. Like, you need to be flexible and things like that. But like, if you're not consistently putting in like good work, like you're just how are you going to compete against people that are doing something full time and that are heavily supported and backed by their nation or by sponsors and all that stuff? Like, it's just like an unreasonable expectation. But beyond like that kind of those prerequisites, I mean, I think you're just talking about more just like character kind of qualities, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Not physical. Like, I think the communication that Thea talked about is very important. I think you have to be. I think this is somewhat try and error, but you have to like be in tune with your body. And so, like, I think if you're talking about, like, say, high school kids or something like that, most high school kids, I think, especially probably nowadays, don't like really understand like what like hard work is. And so, like, they might be, whining about something, and it's like, yeah, that's just what sore is. Like, you're supposed to be sore. Like, that's okay. But then, like, when you start talking about what Thea's trying to be, the best in the world at something, right? And so you have to kind of figure out where that boundary or where that line is of what type of like I'll say discomfort is like acceptable. And discomfort could range from being sore to spraining something to having a tear. Like that it goes across that whole thing. Obviously, you don't want to have a tear because it's going to be a problem, right? But like there might be some days where you should feel really sore and you should have a fair amount of discomfort, and like that's fine and that's part of the program. But like it takes a while to kind of figure out that line unless you're getting MRI every day, which is that's not reasonable. Um, and I think Thea kind of figured that out a bit. Like speaking particularly about her injury, like I knew from a coach's perspective that I was pushing the boundary, and I thought she was doing okay. And I think in the way she was doing okay. She had some like monster jumps injured. She
Yeah.
had some awesome practices injured, and that might be a testament to the type of person that she is. But like it wasn't clear to me that she was as hurt as she was because she was performing well. And so I think that like it could take years for an athlete to really develop that, and you're not going to even get to that point unless you're really working hard. Um, and then as far as other aspects that are really important, I think Thea kind of touched on this already as well. Is like I think you have to just be like intrinsically motivated to do well. I mean, maybe there could be some, external factors, but like if Thea's talking about the stuff, taking pictures of her foot to measure that, timing like her circuits, you know, taking like extra notes and like diaries and stuff about what she does, like certainly all the people I coach don't do that. Walking through the hallways doing drills and things like that, like that type of stuff is like I think that's what kind of separates the good people from like the really, really good people. You kind of, are living and breathing like what you do. I don't think that means you have to necessarily be obsessed about what you're doing, but it has to be like a strong priority. And you can't just think that, hey, I'm going to go to practice for 2 hours and then the rest of the time I'm just doing something else. Like, yeah, you definitely should rest. You definitely should have time away from your sport and things like that. But like, it's not just about those 2 hours at practice. It's about those other details. If that's little rehab things that you have to do, if that's some imagery things that you need to do, if that's getting sleep, if that's eating right. And I think that like Thea is, pushing the boundaries and kind of all of those things and exploring those. And that's really what I think separates, you know, good from the great.
I think what's so cool about that, Aaron, is like just recognizing what makes Thea special, and amplifying that stuff while kind of being her best advocate to manage the things that may be her nemesis. What are some examples of ways you have to individualize for some of the other athletes you work with?
As far as like the training that she does,
As far as like with your other athletes, like are there any other examples of ways that you have to pick out certain qualities and change something in their training plan or change something in their process to better suit what makes them individual?
um, yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, I would say generally speaking that like anybody that I coached, like they're all doing a lot of like similar things.
Mm-hmm.
On a given day, they might do slightly different things. I might say, hey, you need to really work on this technical aspect. So like instead of doing this drill for your hop, this other person's going to do this drill for their step phase or something like that because that's what they really need. If we're doing something that's like more competitive or something, I might like add handicaps in, like do whatever. I'm going to add 2 feet to whatever that kid jumps so they can you know put some pressure on Thea or something like that. um but like I think the individualization from particularly comes into play in probably two places, like the weight training and just like the technical cues that I'm giving somebody.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so like I think, for example, like one of the other people that I coach just you know, they graduated last year, so it was like my first year working with them, graduated college. And so like they have different strength qualities than Thea. And so it's like, okay, I want you to get your strength numbers here. And so they're going to be more like a strength building, maybe even like a teeny bit of hypertrophy type stuff. And Thea might just be more on like strength maintenance, more like power, um, ballistic kind of stuff. And then as far as like if we're talking about just technical things, I mean that, you know, that could be anything, but it's like I'm not just saying like generic cue for everybody. For like even if it's the same thing, they might have the same like technical issue, but like I think this is where the communication comes into play. Like I might say something to Thea and say the same thing to this other woman, and like they interpret it totally differently. And so like I need to understand that there's like this two-way, or what do they call it, like a shared consciousness between us. Like it can't just be like, okay, coach, got it, but like you didn't really get it. Like I need you to tell me what you think I mean by what I said. And so then that might mean that like, okay, this cue for Thea works well, but it doesn't work for this other person, so I'm going to stay away from that cue and do something different. And so I definitely say different things to different people, even if I mean the same thing. Of course, there's some instances where I might use the same cues, but like you can't. I think a big kind of pitfall of like any coach can just be like, you heard this one cue and just stick with it, and if the athlete doesn't get it, then it's their fault or something. Like you got to adapt to who you're dealing with.
I think that's great. I think, with anything, it's tracking trends, what's working, what's not working, and having those little benchmarks for yourself to you're getting feedback from your athletes immediately after every rep. So refining your process is huge. Thea, I want to circle back to you talking about injuries a little bit. And something I've just been so impressed in our conversations is about your body awareness and your understanding of as you've learned things through maybe making some miscalculations, that difference between discomfort and pain and injury. So if you had a high school athlete who I think a lot of times have trouble distinguishing that, and a lot of coaches have trouble distinguishing that and communicate with their athletes, how would you advise a high school athlete to learn that process for themselves?
So there has to be, you know what? I'm going to actually quote you, because the way you explained it to me was actually like one of the best explanations I've ever thought of or ever heard, for a high schooler. And it was the green, yellow, red light kind of like way to rank your pain or label your pain. And I think that's what high schoolers have to acknowledge, that yellow doesn't necessarily mean that something's wrong. Like differentiating between something that's hurt and something that's sore, that's two different kinds of pain. And with high schoolers, I coached for a bit out of college, and when things would buck them, I would always tell them to, if it's especially muscular, or even in the joint, I would ask them to roll out everything around it first. And I was like, let's loosen up things around it. Let's get some ice on it, and then we'll figure out, how bad it is. Because so many of these kids just was like, oh, my quad hurts. And I'm just like, well, you lifted pretty heavily yesterday. Did you do anything when you got home, recovery wise? Did you do any light stretching after you took a shower? Did you roll out? No. Okay. All right. Well, let's figure it out from there. And I think that's the thing with the high school kids. I've literally asked people before, like, okay, red, yellow, green, where are you right now? Like, are you apprehensive when you move? Are you concerned about pain that would occur because of this movement? Or is it just kind of this dull, continuous aching in a part of your body? So thanks for that one, Doc. But I think that's what it is. And it's asking these younger kids, these high schoolers, like, is it inhibiting your everyday? Or is it very much so like organized to one location, isolated, or when there's only one movement that occurs and you feel it? And also, if it's a reoccurring situation, like, now you got to ask them to start paying attention to their body. Like, hey, I need you to, when next time you feel this pain, you've got to now tell me what occurred before it, because now we've got to start tracking a trend, or at least finding a trend. But yeah,
I love that. I think that the big thing that I always think about with this is that these kids don't have a model for what pain or discomfort is. You know, they're training
None.
harder than they have, so they're feeling things they never felt. So how are they supposed to understand what it is?
Yeah.
And a lot of times I feel like coaches come down hard on these kids because their understanding is just soreness. But the kid doesn't know that. So I love what you said there. It's really like a data collection process for yourself.
It has to be. It has to be.
But just like anything, if you're collecting data blindly, you don't have someone guiding you or helping you have reference as to what you're feeling. How are you ever supposed to build a map for yourself?
Yeah.
Right? Because with every injury, there's a silver lining to it. Like you said, with your quad injury, if you feel that sensation again, that was the first time you felt that. If you feel that again, you're going to know immediately this is not right. You push it on a little bit, but now you understand that you have a representation of that sensation. So
100%.
I think that's a huge intervention point for coaches and medical practitioners to help speed up that process for a young athlete to build that map in their head. You can avoid a lot of unnecessary pain and injury and issues by helping someone to do that. So I really love that how you explain that, Thea.
Thanks.
And you can steal that red, yellow, green for yourself.
I plan on it.
I stole it from somebody else. So just own it. So
I'll give you all credit. I'll give you credit always. I'll cite my sources.
Now you just give credit like the first 2 times, and then it just starts becoming yours, right? Like.
Yeah.
So Thea, you mentioned a background as a dancer. How do you feel that's helped you, in your transition to track and field?
I gotta just give it up to body awareness. Just knowing kind of how to isolate body movements and how to pay attention to my body movements. And when I joined track, I did high jump, long jump, triple jump, and hurdles. And everything is like monitoring your speed of one movement and being able to extend yourself to this point. So I think it was body awareness met flexibility and rhythm. And that came together in this sport, and it was like perfect. I remember when I tried triple jump for the first time, my second phase was a straight up leap. Like I would hop and full out, pointed toes, everything, leap. And my coach was like, great ups, great bounce, wrong technique. And like they had to bring it back and like fix that. They're like, okay, front like that, 90 degrees. Being able to like take that instruction, 100% I'd give it up to the dance background. I mean, you're talking about being in a room at 3 hours for 3 hours at a time. And if you did something wrong, bring it back again. And you're in a room with a large mirror, so you can see your mistakes too. And, I had a very strict teacher who did not care how many times you're going to bring the music back or start the choreography over again. You were going to get it right. And we got punished when we got it wrong. Like, that was it. You want to try holding your leg above your head for a long time? Like, no, it's not comfortable, but I bet when you have to do it on proper cue again, you're going to do it right. And that, switch over to bring that to track and field years later. I was able to pick up on things quickly. Someone once told me that triple jump should sound like skipping rocks, like the pop, pop, pop. And I was like, you give me a rhythm, we're going to make it happen. And then I met Aaron, and Aaron is very, very into his athletes being able to acknowledge and almost like diagnose their own bodies. So I'd do a short approach jump at practice, and I'd get out of the pit. And normally I would look to Aaron immediately for feedback, which is what I'm used to doing in from high school and college. And boy, was I shocked when he just looked at me. And I was like, you're not going to say anything? He was like, you're not going to say anything? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he goes, what went wrong? And I was like, I had no clue. So there was a moment where before I would jump, I would know what I was supposed to be doing, but I don't think I was very aware in the moment of what was going on in all 3 parts of my jump. And he forced me into the habit of being able to acknowledge real time in the middle of a jump. Like I'd like let out a sound, and he was like, what was that sound about? I was like, I was way, way too apprehensive on that hop. Like I did not take my time. It didn't come around well. And by the next thing you know, 3 years later, I get out the pit and I'm like, oh, that was trash. This was wrong. And he's like, okay, how are you going to fix it? I'm like, oh, I'm going to do this, and this. And I also want to try this. Like, is it okay? And I had to get to a point where I had to get that courage up to like ask to try things. Which only happened after I got the basics down, because you can't just come in and be like, oh hey, I want to try this. Like, no, you don't even know how to walk. How are you gonna run yet? Kind of a thing. But yeah, shout out to dance for that. Shout out to ballet for some true discipline that has clearly carried over into my life. And flexibility. This sport is a lot of pounding on your body, and I've been landing jumps from high heights from a while, and so it all came into this, and being able to hit proper angles is like the name of the game in triple jump. And I don't really have much of a problem hitting those angles due to dance, and I love it. So thankful for it, for sure.
That sounds like such a fluid transition. Do you see many dancers transitioning to jumps?
Quite a bit. There tends to be a large group of gymnasts and dancers. Gymnasts tend to go to track and field very oftentimes kind of after they hit puberty and their muscle mass increases, or they just have that height spike. Gymnasts are not known to be 5'8" and taller, so they tend to transition, and they definitely are powerful, but they have that low arm run thing, which it can be difficult to transition. Dancers tend to be very light on their feet, naturally, because of years of being told to be light on their feet. But both are very good at taking instruction because of choreography and coaching and coming from like an intense situation. I think that's it's definitely common. I've coached girls that did ballet for like 10 years, and they picked up triple jump like that. And I was like, oh, I'm not surprised. You've been forced to do all these other work physically on your body and take instruction for most of your life. So I'm not surprised it transitions. And it transitions very well, especially people who did ballet, especially them. Yeah.
That's awesome. So what I want to kind of wrap up with is something I really appreciate both of you is like the not accepting something just for how it always is, evaluating every piece of information, at depth, objectively, and for what it's worth right there. So what would you say are some of the biggest myths and misconceptions that live in the track and field world? Those sacred cows that need to die. I'll let Aaron start with that one.
Yeah.
Well, if we're just talking about maybe at like the high school level, definitely that, maybe more is better. So what I mean is like, I think some coaches think that like, okay, let's grind every day. Let's go hard every day at practice. And like, I think high school can be a trap a little bit because like the kids are growing, and like because of like their endocrine systems and stuff, like a lot of times you can get away with doing some kind of wild training with them. And because you have like such a large number of kids that like enough of them might be successful, but like you can't just run your kids hard every single day, despite it working sometimes. Like you shouldn't do that. Kids need to have rest. Like especially if it's a high intensity workout that is going to have some type of central nervous system impact, like you probably, the research says you need like 72 hours for that. Yeah. So you probably can't really do more than like 2 like high intensity sprints per week. When I say 2, like 2 sessions, not 2 reps, but 2 sessions. And so like that's definitely not something that is adhered to at the high school level for sure. Not in my experience, at least. Other stuff. The high school level, like sprinters, you not need to be doing distance training. That's for sure. You don't need to go for a mile run if you're a sprinter. Like you should be training at the velocities like similar to what you're trying to improve. So if you're a short sprinter, you should be running fast. That doesn't mean that you have to be running all out for everything, but running 50% of max velocity is not going to help you get faster. I mean, unless you're like morbidly obese or something like that. You know, if you're in like reasonable body composition, like doing distance stuff is not going to help you run faster. Maybe doing cross country is better than sitting on the couch all fall.
Yeah,
But like, we don't need to be putting mile runs in our workouts, you know, during the season.
absolutely.
Um, and then like probably like my biggest maybe pet peeve, and I think this is maybe at like all levels, is like that there's just kind of like this, I don't know if this bad feeling towards like hypertrophy. And so like I think as like a track athlete, generally speaking, I mean, unless you're like a thrower, like you want to be as light as possible, like while you know maintaining you know certain like qualities, right? Like you know you don't want to be anorexic and like not have any energy and run slow, of course, right? But like just because like if you add like lean muscle mass, like that's not a bad thing because you gained weight necessarily. Like it could be, but it doesn't have to be. Like I think when kids, especially in high school, like you're developing, like I think one of the things, there's two things that probably shocked me when I became like more of an elite coach and I started actually going around the world and seeing people was like elite, you know, power athletes, let's say like sprinter, jumper, hurdlers, like they're either very lean or they're like have incredible musculature, you know. And so it's like if you compare that to like some high school kid that looks like a baby giraffe or something, like those kids need some hypertrophy. And if they gain some of those kids, if it's, you know, if it's a, you know, I had this kid that I coach and he, you know, his sister was a good high jumper and he's pretty tall. He's probably like 6'3" or something, but he's like a string bean. And so like over the years, like he probably, you know, gained like 20 pounds, but he's, you know, jumping his butt off. You know what I'm saying? And so like hypertrophy can be very, very helpful
Yeah,
because you're getting more of that cross-sectional area that's gonna allow you to have more of like a higher potential as far as like your muscle activation, assuming that it's like the right tissue quality. And so like even at the collegiate level, you have somebody who's super duper fast, like giving them a little bit more hypertrophy could be helpful. I'm not saying like in all cases it is, but like we shouldn't just always be like you got to be lighter, you got to be lighter, you can't gain weight, you can't gain weight. And I think that like can be particularly true for triple jump where like I think that you know having some of that muscle mass is going to give you more resiliency such that you can train more and protect you against you know some of like your technical faults which are going to happen time to time. Like humans make mistakes, like that happened. And so if you're some skinny jumper who just relies on their speed and you don't have anything to kind of back that up, you hit a jump poorly, you're going to be in trouble.
yeah, yeah.
But anyway, that was my long-winded response.
I had a feeling Aaron might have some thoughts on that question.
Yeah, that's why I let him go first. I knew. Um, my big one, I think you already know this, especially for the younger athletes, I think that there should be an introduction to rehab prehab at a lot younger age, especially in high school. Um, I just think it's very easy. And, you know, kids are young, like these kids are younger and maybe not as prone to these injuries. But I mean, there's so many things that I feel like could have been prevented by just instilling proper prehab habits. And if you're talking injuries, like why not get ahead of them if you can? And it could be as simple as like, you know, the coach going to Home Depot and going to the PVC pipe area and just spending $20 and cutting some tubes for the kids to roll out on, wrapping that in tape or something. And boom, maybe less hamstring issues, or teaching them or implementing 10 minutes of just like shin strengthening stuff with some bands at the end of practice, like partners and bands and that kind of stuff. But I just don't think that a lot of kids know how to take care of their bodies and their muscles at that age. And I wish like I had known. I was very thankful to have a good high school coach that would very, very so often ask me about how my body was feeling, and I would be honest, and he would tailor workouts per person based on how they were feeling that day. But not everyone's like that, especially on larger teams. They just show up and, you know, at the line by 3:30, set, go. And once they walk off the track, it's not much communication past that. But I think I really believe in, like, you know, you want your body to go long, you got to take care of it, and being able to take care of it is a major part of the game, especially once you get older, you continue with the sport like I am. And I live by prehab and rehab. I think Dustin and Anthony definitely know that, you know. I called Dustin post my injury and I was like, hey, I need to run some things by you. What do you think of this? And we had a conversation about it, but I 100% believe in taking care of your body on and off the track. So that's fine.
I don't want to take up a ton of time, but like I think just piling on Thea's part is just like, I think let's say at like the high school level in America, at least, I think there's like not much enough of understanding between like movement patterns and injury. And so it's like, I think some high school coaches is like, oh, I have these workouts that I'm going to use. And like, if the kids do well, great. If they don't, it's like their fault. And like, I have no agency in like making people better in that regard, as opposed to saying like, oh, this person's running slow because like their technique is bad and I should help them fix their technique. I'm just going to like run them. If it gets better, great. If it doesn't, who cares? Or I don't even see that it's not good. You know, so it's like if you don't even know that something, the technique is important or what the technical model is supposed to be, then people are gonna then the kids are gonna suffer essentially. And I see that happens a ton in high school, and it definitely happens a lot more than I'd like in college as well. I would say in Europe, that's not as much of the case. The European youth kids look better than most college kids from what I've seen. But I think the part of the reason is because their coaching education is a lot more strict in those countries, where in America, a lot of cases you have like, you know, English teacher just doing track to get an extra stipend or something.
Yeah, I think this goes across sport, where in America there's this win now mentality. So you got 8-year-old kids playing soccer, traveling, you know, cross state to go play in this tournament, and the focus is win, win, win. So there becomes this model of these kids rise to the top, and it's like, well, they're succeeding. If it's not broke, I'm not going to fix it. So
exactly.
It's like, well, he was the fastest 8th grader in the county. I'm not going to touch this kid. He's, you know, I'm not going to mess with it. Yeah, he doesn't look perfect, but he's running fast.
Yeah.
So if we don't intervene then, like when do you intervene?
Really? Only when they get injured. That's the trend.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree, but I think that like, I mean, like you said, it happens in basketball and stuff too. You talk about the best 7th grader in the country. Like, my thing is, who cares? Because like, you don't know what those kids are gonna look like when they're 18. Kids grow up at different ages. Like, there's plenty of research that suggests that prepubescent area is like extremely important as far as like developing, you know, those neural connections appropriately, as far as developing skills. And so it's like, if you just have this kid specializing at that age with poor movement patterns, they're losing a portion of their development that they're never going to get back. And it's not even that serious. Like, who cares if your kid is a really good 8th grader or not 8th grader, 8-year-old or whatever? It doesn't matter. Like, you want them to be a really good 18-year-old or a really good 25-year-old or whatever. So slow down, take that time when they're younger to have them moving properly, and then, you know, let the testosterone and puberty do its thing, and that's like those are easy wins. But
if they're a great 7th grade basketball player, good. Make them a good baseball player too. Get them on the track, get them moving. Like, let them go roller skating. Like, let's not, you know, individualize your child's sport pre-puberty. Like, give them that variety. Like, how are they going to build those neural pathways if you're not like mixing it up for them? And that's why I always love like seeing kids just play and tumble and like go from wanting to throw the football around to wanting to hold a baseball bat, and you throw the baseball to them. Like, good. Let them keep active. Let them keep busy. Don't like let them sink down to just one item so young. Because I mean, great, your kid is, yeah, like Aaron said, great at basketball in 7th grade, but like when he's 18 and you know, Bobby, who played basketball, played baseball, and is also now like 6'6", 6'7", is, you know, might be better at basketball than the kid that was great at 7th grade.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's probably good to take little Timmy with a beard in 6th grade off the basketball court and make him suck at something.
Yeah.
I mean, like, give him the perspective of, you know, go learn this skill, like you said, and how that's going to connect and, you know, be synergistic later on. You have no idea, but I think that's a humongous point and something that, you know, we see all the time because we see these kids in 8th grade broken down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mentally and physically.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Because rather than diversifying, like you said, parents and coaches are just doubling down. Oh, this kid's got a shot. We gotta get them in all these leagues. We gotta get them in summer league, and it ends up being a hindrance.
Yeah, but you don't know at that age.
Oh, I have no idea.
You don't know.
But, you know, but I think it's parents want to feel like they're fostering their child's gifts. But like, people also have to acknowledge that there's diversity. Like, you have to diversify your child's athletic, like presence. And that's the key. Like, everyone asks me, like, oh my goodness, like, when you have kids, are they going to be running track the moment they can walk? And I'm like, no, what?
I mean,
no?
I think you guys know better than us. Like, you know, you have these young girls getting ACL injuries and stuff like that playing soccer. It's like, what are you doing? Like, let these kids have some, you know, variety so they can actually, you know, develop a bunch of different skills, and then they can specialize maybe when they're 16 or 17 or something. But like, you shouldn't have people having like serious surgeries when they're like 14. Like, that's crazy to me.
Yeah, it's wild, man. It's definitely eye-opening what we see in the clinic, and I think a lot of it, you know, unfortunately is relatively unavoidable.
Yeah.
And it's scary to see that trend, you know, moving further and further, especially in such a hyper-competitive, you know, area the country is we're in is the DMV.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
So interesting. Does anybody have any questions? Dustin, what you got?
So I just wanted to kind of chime in a little bit on the myth and misconception thing real quick, because they missed a big one, because obviously there's a major myth and misconception that women can't do a double arm approach.
Oh, yeah, that one. I thought about it, but I was like, well, we touched on it.
No, I just wanted to, you know, I think that, you know, the question I have is more directed towards Thea and like the impact of COVID. You know, obviously we kind of, you know, got into that a little bit earlier, but, you know, how have you personally, you know, utilized your space? Like you said, you kind of created like a weight room area, but for like, you know, on the days that you can't get out to the track, and you said it was more of like a recent thing, you've been getting out to the track, like, what have you been able to do? Have you been able to find areas, you know, around your house? You've been on the sidewalk, you going old school, putting the sidewalk chalk down, and, you know, what kind of stuff are you getting into with that?
So, I created a little rehab station upstairs, the other way back there. If I can't get on the track, I'm very lucky. I live next to a major park. It's a gardens, it's Brookside Gardens, which feeds into a huge park and recreation area. So I can go there. And then up the street from me is also a smaller park, which also has a soccer field on it. So I hop on there also. So I'm very lucky to literally be a half a mile in either direction from major grounds. And I will say I haven't ran into any major like weather situations yet. I have gone onto the track in pouring rain. I have a good warm rain jacket that's like meant to be like utilized on the track, so I use that. But I also check the weather every Sunday and plan my workouts accordingly. But yeah, it's me in the grass, really. I just find if I can find at least 50 meters, 30 to 50 meters of even grass, I utilize it. That's it.
And then not necessarily trying to sound like I'm on the pessimistic side of things at all.
Go ahead.
Because I'm not.
Yeah.
But let's say, we really have no idea how long this is going to last for. And then you guys talked a little bit about how trying to plan ahead and figure out what you can do and utilize different equipment in different areas and to continue to train. But leading up to the Olympics next year, if this really does push, let's say to the end of the year or so, what do you feel the impact of not having really any sort of competitive event would have on just the Olympics as a whole, really not having any tournaments or any events like that to compete?
I think it's definitely going to be, a hard punch to take, because so much of the Olympics is also, you have to think about the fans. And when you think about your major, sporting events, like, it's the energy you feel in the room. And that definitely comes from the people they're supporting. And so I think if tournaments have to be canceled, or there's a new way to, for lack of better terms, just choose who moves on, I think it's going to be, it's not going to be the same. It's not, because so much of it is, in that moment, that feeling, the crowd's cheering, and that atmosphere makes so much of almost every sporting event. And that's going to be difficult. Someone even asked me, what do I think about, if the sport was being able to still be held, if the event was to be held, but without a crowd. And I didn't even have an answer, because I hadn't even thought about that. I was like, literally like a football sized stadium empty? I don't know. And I mean, if that's what I have to do, I'm gonna do it. But it's just not the same, especially when you think about the games and qualifying for the games. Like, the Olympics is about bringing the world together, and we're now essentially trying to do this, coming off the heels of a major event that forced the world apart.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man.
Well, we'll have to get you some AirPods or something and record some fan noise if that's the
Yeah,
case.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'll just hand them my phone and be like, just hook the aux up. Just play it through the surround sound in here.
Lord knows the Colbert family's got your back.
Jesus. Yes. I will definitely hear Braxton in the background screaming.
We have a small country of people to be cheering for you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Any other questions?
When are you going to get me and Ian out to come do a practice with you guys?
Whenever we can have a practice. Dustin's always asked about coming out to practice.
I'm coming out at some point. I want Aaron to pick me apart.
Oh, you're gonna jump in, do some bounding with us?
I'm trying it.
Let's go.
Man, go for it, man.
Absolutely. Come on through.
Protect that Achilles, Dustin.
Yeah, no injuries, please. I can't have you. God,
I'm pretty happy.
Yeah, but seriously, I mean, you guys are definitely welcome to come. I don't have private practices or something like that. I'm not. I mean, there's nothing proprietary going on here. I mean, besides, I think the proprietary part is the eye. You can't take my eyes, so and you guys have been. Just to be clear, you guys have been, certainly instrumental in some of my and Thea's development and part of her journey too. So
absolutely.
I certainly have no problem sharing with you guys if you guys want to observe or learn or whatever. I'm totally happy to help there and do whatever you guys need.
Yeah, and a major shout out to you guys and everyone I've met at Rehab to Perform. I mean, it's always been a very positive energy. It's never a place I felt like I've been in weight rooms before, or rehab facilities or training rooms where it's there's a level of ego sometimes, people not want to ask certain people for help, and it's such an open community. I've seen you ask Mike or anyone else hey, what do you think about this? And I was like, sorry about that. And I was shocked. I was like, there is no ego here. There's a level of professionalism. You guys enjoy what you guys do. I love the ongoing competitions or ratings or everything on the boards. It's always a conversation.
Enter, baby.
Yes. And it's always been a baseline. biggest compliment I could give anyone, a baseline of common sense. And I don't think that's very common in general when it comes to taking care of athletes at any, or people at any level of professionalism in the sport or just in general. And you guys have always been an open and kind ear to any of my situations, any needs, and major thank you. Thank you a million times over.
Well, we really appreciate that, Thea. I think the big thing is we take what we do very seriously, but we try not to take ourselves that seriously.
It's a winning combination, truly.
For sure. Well, guys, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate this. I think this, the message you guys send and the relationship you guys have and just the lessons you guys have learned as you continue on the process can just be so helpful for, so many young athletes and so many coaches and physical therapists. So I hope you guys continue to, as you gain success and as you go through your process, continue to share this message, because I think it can be, so beneficial to so many and hopefully, help to reduce a lot of unnecessary pain and issues in someone else's process. So kudos to you for, guys figuring this out and for just having the dedication to be so detail oriented and define that process to, reach excellence. So best of luck to you and best luck to both.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Years up and we can see some big jumps coming down the road soon.
Yeah, let's go. Let's go.